The NFC, should we start? We like to go the opposite way of traditional geography. So we'll go west to east and south to north. So we'll do NFC West, NFC South, NFC North, NFC East in that order.
Yes.
As per
That is the
One Trick Power Hour tradition.
And then we go alphabetical within the divisions too, it seems like.
Yes, alphabetical within the divisions, yes.
So
with alphabetical by geographical location.
Yeah.
Named, I guess we should say
by division.
Named geographical location divisions. Since the Cardinals don't really play, Arizona, but they play in, or do they play in Phoenix, or they play in 10? I don't know where the stadium is. Is it Glendale, or is it
Glendale? I think it's Glendale. Yeah. And it's Greater Phoenix area, right?
Yeah, you played in Tempe at one point.
Yeah, I want to say it's Glendale.
It is Glendale, Arizona, State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona. And of course, I think the 49ers don't play in San Francisco anymore. They play.
It's
in Santa Clara, California. I think the Rams might play in Los Angeles, or do they play like in the City of Industry or something like that?
I don't
know. Inglewood. They play in Inglewood, California.
Inglewood, okay.
And I think only Seattle, I think, plays in the city.
But there are no Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, though. That's the
Lumen Field is in Seattle. So. But in any case, we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals.
Arizona Cardinals. They currently have 5 quarterbacks on their roster, Mike.
5.
Kyler Murray, Colt McCoy, David Blau, Jeff Driscoll, and Clayton Tune. Any question about the number 1 quarterback?
Well, I guess there's question because Kyler Murray is currently injured and rehabbing his injury, as we saw from footage available and photographs where he was wearing a sort of monitoring device on his chest that much of social media referred to as a sports bra that Murray was wearing. Other football players wear it usually too, but they usually wear it over a t-shirt rather than just against the skin, as Murray was. So it did look like he was wearing a brassiere on the sidelines. But Kyler Murray, once a very, very hyped prospect, he's had an up and down career in the NFL. He's 26 years old. He signed a huge contract. You have the details of that. But he was the former number 1 overall pick in 2019, former Heisman Trophy winner in 2018 from Oklahoma. But he was only 3-8 as a starter last year. He's small. He's only about 5'10". He's a good runner, but he gets hurt a lot. He doesn't really pay that much attention, it seems like, in drills and in studying, and he's more interested in video games sometimes. So he's going to cost the Cardinals a lot of money, and
next year.
And it seems like next year
he's relatively pricey. Yeah, he's the 6th highest paid NFC quarterback this season, $16 million. But next year he would be the number 1 by a lot. Yeah, because it's going to go to $52 million next.
It's going to make more than $50 million. And it seems like maybe people are thinking the Cardinals are in play for the number 1 draft pick next year, and that might be another former Oklahoma quarterback, currently USC quarterback, who followed Lincoln Riley to USC. And that was Caleb Williams, who's kind of the consensus at this point, number 1 overall pick next year. So if the Cardinals want him, well, what do you do with Murray? How do you get rid of Murray? Are they just saddled with him? But he's not even playing the beginning of this year. Who knows when he'll be healthy?
What are they expecting him? Is he? Yeah, it looks like he's on the physically unable to perform list right now. Are they expecting him for the first game of the season, or is he going to be several weeks? Do you know?
He got injured in December of 2022, so it's possibly he won't, because those ACL injuries, it's ACL, so like those last a year almost usually. So I would say second half of this season at the earliest. But I think there are some people who think maybe he'll be able to play in September, but I don't know. He won't be as good. So, They say so. I keep seeing September by some, but that seems optimistic to me. I would say halfway through the season is
Yeah. So it's
November.
typically 8 to 10 months to recover from post-surgery.
Yeah,
And that was December, right?
he
So
got injured in December, so I guess September possibly, but September through November,
I
I
mean,
would.
like in the 8 to 10 months, that's right in the middle, right? So
And usually the player is not as good, doesn't make a full recovery until the year after that. Even it
yeah.
takes usually 2 years after an ACL to get back to where you were. So, um,
But
yeah,
he but he's with the team and he's on the sidelines, right? So
yeah,
that's
he wasn't wearing a brace when he was wearing his sports bra esque monitor.
would you refer to that as a bro?
Hey,
Or a
bro,
man's
a man's ear. Well, it depends if you're from the Frank Costanza or the Cosmo Kramer school of nomenclature.
That's the most important question that we've asked, I think, maybe on this show ever. Is it a
Man's ear.
bro?
Man, the bro is too ethnic to Frank Costanza, but Kyler Murray is black, so maybe he would refer to it as a bro. And I think bro has become more, well, bra in some ways has become more used lately. So maybe we just call it a bra as in a bro. And that would be the name of it. Bruh or bruh type of
Yeah.
bruh. Yeah.
BRUH, bro.
WH for Gen Z.
Yeah.
I don't really care for Gen Z, but that's neither here
Yeah.
nor that's why we really reach out to the young audience here on
That's why we're here.
20 Truck Power Hour. But behind Murray, we have it seems like the start of the beginning of the season is going to be Colt McCoy.
Another
He's
another former Big 12 QB.
the form out of Texas,
Yeah.
third round pick by Cleveland back in 2010. He's 37 years old, or will be in September. He has also played for the 49ers, Washington, the New York Giants, and the Cardinals. And he's been with the Cardinals since 2021. He's 1-2 as a starter last year, 11-25 as a starter for his career. He's at this point, and even probably throughout his career, was probably somewhere floating between backup and starter. So he's a solid backup, decent spot starter, but you wouldn't want him to be your starting quarterback for the whole year. But as a backup, he's pretty good. So he's getting older, so he might fall off the cliff at some point. But I think he's a solid backup.
But they may be expecting him to make like 6, 7 starts, though, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, he's 11 in his career as a starter, and so but he's played for a lot of bad teams like the Browns and stuff like that. So
Right.
it's hard. Sometimes those starting records aren't really indicative, but also I think you can say, well, he's not going to transform a bad team into a good team. So if he starts for the Cardinals, his team's going to not be very good. He's 3-3 in 2 years as a starter with the Cardinals, and he's adequate. I think there's also a number, like we mentioned David Blau and Jeff Driscoll as possibly number 3 quarterback. I think they're fairly interchangeable. Blau, I think you said Blau was making more money than Driscoll.
Yeah, but it's a negligible difference, and chances are they'll both. Well, 2 other guys will probably be on the roster then, right? If
Yeah, it seems like every team is probably going to start or have 3 quarterbacks on a 53-man roster because of the new NFL rule that says you can dress 3 quarterbacks now on game day, and the third quarterback will not count against the 46 players that you can dress on out of the 53 or whatever the number is right now. Yeah. It was 45, I think it's 46 now, but because of the problems that the 49ers had at the end of the season against the Eagles when everybody got hurt, and it seemed like the 49ers, if they had won that game against the Eagles, were going to you remember who they were going to start in the Super Bowl if they played against the Chiefs?
Oh no, I don't remember who it was.
Phillip Rivers. They were going to call him up and have him start the Super Bowl, who hadn't been playing at all. He was going to be the Super Bowl starter.
Wow, I don't think I'd heard that actually.
If Garoppolo couldn't make it, which it seemed like he probably couldn't, but
yeah. Wow, that would have been crazy.
They would have guessed. They would have Garoppolo maybe because it's 2 weeks because he was still kind of almost recovering. But yeah, Philip Rivers was going to possibly start the Super Bowl.
Wow.
And so if Philip Rivers had started the Super Bowl and won, would that change his Hall of Fame conversation?
I guess technically.
Would he be a slam dunk Hall of Famer if he had a Super Bowl win and his stats like that? He
I mean,
didn't.
there are Hall of Fame voters that's the key requirement, especially for QBs anyways, that they have won a Super Bowl. And
Yeah, and he didn't do anything to get that team to the Super Bowl.
right.
He won the game and he showed up. And yeah, that's an interesting, I think, dilemma. But so between Blau and Driscoll, Blau Blough looks like bluff, perhaps.
Yes.
He's 28, former undrafted free agent out of Purdue. His first game was in 2019. That year he went 0-5 as a starter in Detroit. He started 2 games last year with Arizona. He's 0-7 in his career as a starter. He's also played on the he's also been on the practice squads of the Browns and the Vikings. So he's got some experience, but he's not that good. So at least he's a decent backup who can fill in, who's been in the game before. I think Driscoll is somewhat the same. He's 2 years older than Blau. He's 30. He was actually drafted. He was a 6th round pick in 2016 by the 49ers out of Louisiana Tech. He actually started his career at the University of Florida. A lot of quarterbacks that we'll mention, these backups, they started at Florida and then went someplace else.
Is that right?
When playing time, I guess, didn't develop. It seems like Florida is the place where they start. And Driscoll was the backup to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. No, he played for Cincinnati in 2018. That was before Joe Burrow. That would have been Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
2018, he started 5 games as a rookie. He's also played for Detroit, Denver, and Houston. Now with Arizona, he's 1-9 as a career as a starter. So
he'd gotten quite a few starts in San Francisco, though, didn't he? That because there were a couple of years in San Francisco basically just didn't have a quarterback for.
Yeah, he never got a start in San Francisco.
He just came into games.
Yeah, this was you were thinking probably the Nick Mullins,
Yeah.
CJ Beathard era.
Right.
We'll talk about Nick Mullins. He's on the Bears. No, not the Bears. He is. He's somewhere. He's somewhere in the NFL right now.
Minnesota.
He's on the Vikings right now. Yeah, he's still around. But yeah, he started there, and Garoppolo, and they've had a few. Now, of course, Purdy and Lance and Darnold that we'll talk about in a minute. But
Coming up shortly.
Yeah, Driscoll and Blau possibly fighting for the 3rd quarterback position if you include Murray as number 1. Back up to McCoy maybe after right now. But we also have a rookie, Clayton Tune, 24 years old. Seems like a lot of these rookie quarterbacks are older, like they're 23, 24, because a lot of them have transferred. I think that happens more and more now in college because of the transfer rules, and people are going from place to place. He was a full-time starter at Houston the last 2 years, 5th round draft pick for the Houston Cougars, current new Big 12 member, Houston. 40 touchdowns to 10 interceptions in 2022, 6'3", 220 pounds, 544 yards rushing last year as well. So he's got some mobility. Maybe he could be a long-term backup, possibly potential starter down the road. Who knows? But he's a rookie, probably no better than number 3 on the depth chart, possibly practice squad, I would guess. But those are the quarterbacks in Arizona. What do you have their salary?
Yeah, so right now, ESPN has Clayton Tune as the number 3 starter in the depth chart. Blau at 4 and Driscoll not listed. But yeah, by money, Murray's top 16 million. Colt McCoy as a backup is making 5 million this year. Blau at 1.02 million, and then Driscoll Tune 940 and 840K each.
So it seems like those are probably veteran minimums. It seems like almost.
Probably, yeah. Well, Tune was probably a rookie contract or something.
Tune's rookie, but probably Blau and Driscoll might be rookie minimums. I think Blau has been in the league maybe a year longer, 2 years longer than Driscoll, so making a little bit more.
So I mean, it may be that they keep McCoy, Blau, and Tune, and let Driscoll go, or maybe they keep all four and put one of them put Tune on the practice squad for a little while and then switch them up when they need to.
I would say maybe they keep McCoy, Driscoll, Blount because Murray's on he's not going to count against the roster at the beginning of the year.
Murray won't, yeah.
And so then they can put Tune as the practice squad, and then they probably put Murray in, get rid of Driscoll or Blau, and probably keep Tune on the practice squad, I would guess. So they would, that's my guess. I don't know. But maybe they think that somebody would pick up Blau as a third quarterback. There is a team that we'll talk about that really has limited options, it seems like, as quarterback right now. But it seems like in this division, the teams are pretty well covered.
We'll have like a solid backup, a pretty good starter, a solid backup plan, and then a couple of flyers, basically, right? That's kind of
and that's what I think. That's what the Rams have.
Yeah, with Stafford, Brett Rippon, Stetson Bennett, and Dresser Wynn.
Who has the worst name, Stetson Bennett or Dresser Wynn?
That is a race to the bottom there. On
would you rather be named after a hat or a piece of furniture?
Yeah, could be either one. Don't know.
Sir.
What would you rather have?
Hey, Dresser, get over here. I think Dresser is worse. Stetson is stupid, but I think it's conventionally stupid. I think Dresser is more like if Stetson's name were a hat instead of Stetson, that would be worse. So like if Dresser was like a Ethan Allen or so, if it had been a name brand, I think that would be Chippendale might be worse, but something it's Dresser is just a terror. It's like it's bed, futon, it's
a
terrible name. But I think anyway, back to, if you want to talk about the quarterback, Matthew Stafford is former number one overall pick in 2009 by Detroit. He played for many years for the Lions. He's 35 years old now. He's a really good quarterback, probably possibly top 10 quarterback in the NFL, maybe if he's healthy. At least he was at one point. He won the Super Bowl with the Rams 2 years ago. They traded a lot to get him. They traded Jared Goff to the Lions and plus a bunch of draft picks to get him. But he has had an elbow injury last year, and it's hard to say if he is how recovered he will be. He's had injury issues 2 out of the last 4 years. So, but that could be a coincidence, but it could mean something. In his last healthy year, Stafford threw for 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, almost 5,000 yards. So this past year, he only started 9 games. He only had 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, much lower than normal.
Yeah, didn't he have like an off-season injury that then he sort of never played very well?
I think he maybe had a knee and an elbow issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was not himself.
Maybe he had like an elbow surgery or something shortly before the season started, and then they kind of tried to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal, and then apparently was, because he didn't seem to have.
He also had a concussion issue, elbow in the off season, and then I think he re-injured his elbow, and he also had a concussion. So it was not.
Is he expected to be?
As far as I know, he's expected to be there at the beginning. Supposedly, he's supposed to be ready to go. Apparently this is a nagging elbow injury that dated back to the 2021 season when he was, I believe, still on I guess that was his first year with the Rams, 2021, but it goes back that far. So you wonder maybe if that's something like Josh Allen might have to deal with or Brock Purdy, another quarterback we'll talk about in the division who's suffering from an elbow injury. But Stafford, I think, is he won the Super Bowl. He was if he leads the Rams to another Super Bowl, he's probably a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's probably just a good quarterback if he doesn't, I think. His Hall of Fame monitor, according to Pro Football Reference, is 71.53. For reference, Mahomes is 86.28 already. Matt Ryan, a similar player, I think, to Stafford, is much higher. He's at 106.5. So 106.05. So like he's only played I think Ryan's only played one more year, but I guess his counting stats are probably higher.
Yeah.
And,
He didn't miss many games.
No, and he won an MVP. Matt Ryan did too, where
Yeah.
Stafford did not. But I think Stafford's he's a solid number one. Brett Rippon, who's probably slotted to be the second quarterback, is, I wouldn't say a great backup, but not terrible. Undrafted free agent out of Boise State in 2019. It was nephew of former Washington Redskins quarterback Mark Rippon, who won the Super Bowl in the early 90s.
Would you call him a legacy player then? As a
nephew is harder to say. Well, literally, the word nepotism comes from nephew. Latin, nepos, from Greek through Latin. But yeah, nepotism. But
less of a thing with players than with
coaches, I think.
Coaching, though, right? Yeah.
Because coaches always can get a spot on the team, because you don't really. Yeah, it's not a merit system necessarily with coaches. It's who you know, it's a networking.
Your individual, contribution as a coach, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Rippon had been with the Broncos until this year, 1-2 as a starter, 4 touchdowns, 8 interceptions in his career, 62.9 career quarterback rating. So not so great, but he's played at least. 4-year starter at Boise State before he was picked up by the Broncos. He's only 1 year older than rookie quarterback Stetson Bennett.
That was what I was going to ask you. Who was older?
Bennett will be 26 on the 28th of October. It's my mom's birthday. He was a walk-on at UGA in 2017. He was then he went to a junior college, then back to Georgia, where he was behind Jake Fromm, who we'll mention later, Jamie Newman and JT Daniels, who we'll also mention later, who is still a college quarterback now at Rice. He's been basically everywhere. But he's won 2 national championships, 21-22, 4th round draft pick this year, 5'11", small but kind of plucky. Maybe a bit of a jerk, because he had some run-ins with the law after his national championship this year. Sort of drunken, disorderly conduct, but maybe he seems like one of those guys who's probably a good college quarterback, but probably won't make it in the NFL, like a Major Applewhite type to me. He's got a dumb name, kind of like Major Applewhite.
That wasn't a rank.
No.
Yeah.
And similar to Major Applewhite or Stetson Bennett, we have Dresser Wynn, who is probably the 4th quarterback, undrafted free agent out of Tennessee Martin. He's about 6'2", 6'3", so he's bigger. He wasn't so great at Tennessee Martin, but he was 18 touchdowns, 11 interceptions ability. But we heard last week, I don't know if we mentioned this on the air, but one of the scouting reports for Dresser Martin in high school said that he was
Dresser Wynn in
high school. He was one of the more gifted athletes out of rural West Tennessee in the past few years. So not one of the more gifted athletes. That's not quarterbacks,
right?
Not from all of West Tennessee, but only rural.
Just the rural part.
West Tennessee. So we're not including the Memphis metropolitan area. We're only including the rural part of the state. And not ever, but not even the last 20 years, the last few years. And so that's their 4th quarterback. So Dresser Wynn if that was the best he could, that was something that's printed in your bio as one of the best compliments you could get.
Yes.
That's not great, but maybe
diamond in the rough, perhaps.
Yeah. If he can dress the part, he can. Dresser. That's a, yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were gonna go with something about, being able to win the role
Ooh,
of
nice.
backup quarterback.
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
just say when.
Those are terrible.
Those are terrible. But well,
But so Stafford is making 20 million this year. All of the backups combined are less than 3 million. So
so yeah,
less,
they have
less
no
than one
money
per.
really in those backups. But it seems like Rippon at least has played, and you kind of wonder, does a team that has a quarterback go down, maybe you bring in somebody like Carson Wentz. There's always a couple people with experience out there. Um, Wentz hasn't been picked up. He's probably I guess you still have Cam Newton possibly out there as a backup option, but that's who at least the you could say the Rams are throwing numbers at the problem. They have three quarterbacks that could possibly be a decent backup, and
Yeah.
they're young-ish, even if they're not as young as maybe you'd like them to be. And
And doesn't have that much experience at the pro level anyway. So it's more of a crapshoot this season if Stafford isn't able to go, near
mhm,
his expected level, right?
yeah,
It's a steep drop off though
from Stafford to
from
Ripon
Stafford.
better win. And it's kind of the opposite issue that the 49ers have. They actually have youth. Their
Mhm.
quarterbacks, uh, two of their quarterbacks are younger than the youngest quarterback on the Rams, and both of those two quarterbacks have um, NFL experience. And
Yes.
Sam Darnold, who's 26, he is about the same age as Stetson Bennett. So, and their oldest guy is 31, Brandon Allen. So you want to go through the quarterbacks for the 49ers and what you think of them as the depth chart, or at least what's being said right now?
Yeah, so depth chart right now they have ESPN has their cheapest quarterback option as the number one, Brock Purdy, number one, Trey Lance two, Sam Darnold three, Brandon Allen four.
Yeah, I tend to, from what I've heard, it seems like Darnold has won the second job, at least so far. He's playing better than Lance is. But it seems like also, which is a little surprising, it seems like they think Purdy's going to be back at the beginning of the season. Maybe his elbow
Mm.
wasn't quite as severe as they thought, but you could still say that maybe Purdy won't be what he was. But Brock Purdy he's only 23 years old. He was a 4-year starter at Iowa State. Solid quarterback there. Seventh round draft pick, last pick overall, Mr. Irrelevant, as they say.
Yes.
252nd overall pick by San Francisco last year. His best year was probably his sophomore season, but he had 4 pretty good years as a starter.
Mhm.
Um, he's not quite 6'1", but he was 5-0 as a starter last year in the regular season. 2 playoff wins before getting injured. He had 107.3 quarterback rating in the regular season, 109.8 in playoffs. So 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, about 1,400 yards passing. So not a ton of passing yards in
Yeah.
those games, but he did pretty well. And it seems like he did just as well or better than Garoppolo or Lance did with the same system in his
Mm.
first year. So yeah, the question is, can Purdy continue his success? Is he another Tom Brady type story, low round draft pick? Not he's going to become Tom Brady, but low round draft pick who can become a solid starter even early on. And is he going to be okay with his elbow?
Well, maybe the most important thing was that the team seemed to rally around him too. So like they seem to be supporting him as the choice to move forward if he's available. And I mean he's already exceeded expectations, right? For like the draft pick. Uh Already above and beyond what any other, you know, quarterback selection of that round even probably has done, right? So
Yeah. Would you say he's a pretty good
ooh,
player?
I didn't know we were doing all puns here.
Well, since we had Dresser win,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I
right.
think we have to continue this now for every team from here
Shoehorn
out.
in. Well, I think even though I think Darnold is probably going to be this number 2 quarterback. He and Lance are kind of interesting parallels because Darnold is 26 years old. He was the former number 3 overall pick by the Jets in 2018. That was out of USC. That was the same draft class where Mayfield was picked number 1 overall. Josh Allen was picked, I believe, number 4 by the Bills. Josh Rosen was picked in the top 10, I think, by the Cardinals or close to it. And then Lamar Jackson was picked at the end of that round. So 5 first-round quarterbacks that year. Ironically, probably Lamar Jackson has had the most success, and he was picked at the end of the round. But some people thought Darnold was probably maybe the number 1 overall prospect that year, but it turns out, I guess Allen has probably had maybe the most success, a consistent success anyway, even though Lamar won an MVP. But Allen, I think, has been less hurt. But anyway, so Allen and Jackson have been the top 2 quarterbacks though easily. But Darnold, he played for the Jets for 3 years, never really panned out. They ended up drafting Zach Wilson, also I think 3rd overall or 2nd overall.
Yeah.
Now they're on to Aaron Rodgers, so they haven't solved their quarterback situation. He went to Carolina for the last 2 years. He's in total, this is his first year with the 49ers. He's 21-34 overall as a starter. He was 4-2 for Carolina last year. So sort of turning things around. 92.6 quarterback rating. Career, he's a 78.2 quarterback passer rating. Not so great. 61 touchdowns, 55 interceptions. So that's almost even. So, but maybe he's getting better. Maybe he's on the way back to showing what he once was. But I think it seems like he's probably the backup because from what I've heard, Lance hasn't moved forward that much. He's only 23 though, like Purdy. He was also the number 3 overall pick, like Darnold. He only started 1 year though at North Dakota State, unlike Darnold, who played at USC. Purdy played at Iowa State. North Dakota State is only formerly Division I AA, not football championship subdivision. He didn't play in the COVID year except for 1 game, I think. So he was drafted after that COVID season. But when he played that 1 year as a starter for North Dakota State, he had 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions that year, 1,100 yards rushing, 14 rushing touchdowns. So he had flashed a dual ability, but in San Francisco gave up a lot to get him. They traded Miami their first round pick, also gave Miami 2 additional first round picks and a 3rd round pick just to get him. But he hasn't played much. He was injured last year. Garoppolo started until he was hurt as well. And Trey Lance has been struggling even before injury. He's only been 2-2 as a starter. Maybe he's turning a corner, but maybe he's a trade candidate. Who knows? But it seems like he is definitely out of the starting role and possibly even just a 3rd quarterback in San Francisco, even though he had that supposedly very productive training session with Patrick Mahomes over the summer. Do you have any insight on the Darnold Lance?
Well, so Trey Lance did play the most in the preseason game that they had so far. And he looked like he was pretty productive, I guess. It's 10 of 15, 112 yards and a touchdown, no picks. But he was sacked 4 times, which isn't a great sign for a preseason game. So he did have,
especially for a mobile quarterback, you don't want to be
sick. Well, and who's dealing with injuries, you don't want him to take any hits if he doesn't have to, especially in the preseason. But I guess you want him to get maybe a couple of like minor hits in just so like he's back to being ready for NFL speed and prepared at least anyway for the regular season. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably not ideal to have your guy who spent a lot of time on the injury list last season getting hit 4 times.
Yeah. So I wouldn't,
a meaningless preseason game, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to trade Lance. But at this point, it's hard to see what you might get for him. Brandon Allen is the 4th quarterback. He seems like an ideal kind of 3rd quarterback or second or backup. He's 2016 6th round pick by Jacksonville. He went to University of Arkansas as an undergraduate. He will be 31 years old now in September. He played for the Jags and the Rams practice squads. He played a bit for Denver in 2019. He was a backup to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati last 3 seasons. He started 6 games when Burrow was out, but he's 2-7 in his career as a starter. So like he's somebody who can start a game, but is not going to win you a lot of games. But he's somebody who can at least has played. But it seems like that's somebody that the 49ers don't really need. So I think if the 49ers decide, well, we don't want
They did
Allen.
go through like 5 QBs last year, though, right? So
yeah. So I guess if the 49ers get rid of Allen, like maybe one of the other quarterback needing teams that needs like a third quarterback might pick it up again. He's sort of
well, really, if 49ers think that they are going to try to trade Lance, or if they think he's like slipped to number 3 on the depth chart, then it makes sense to try to move him because his salary at $9.3 million for this season is awfully high for a third string quarterback, right?
Yeah.
It seems like most of the teams in the league, their third string quarterback's only making like around $1 million. So he would be by far, I think, the highest paid third string QB.
Yeah, and I guess if you think Lance is a potential starter, that's not very much money for a potential starter, but it's a lot of money for a third string guy. And I think the 49ers seem to like Purdy. And I think I don't know. Maybe I just from what I've heard, I think it seems like Darnold has gotten. I think Darnold might actually be the best quarterback out of all those, but I think until Purdy turns back into a pumpkin, if he ever will, I think he should still have the benefit.
Yeah, as long as he's healthy enough to start.
Yeah,
it's probably still his role unless, someone takes it from him or he is unable to play. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we move on to Seattle?
Sure. Only 3 quarterbacks in Seattle, though.
Mm-hmm.
He now paid Geno Smith, Drew Lock, and Holton Ahlers.
Ahlers, I guess. I don't know. It's Ahlers. Could be either.
Holton, though.
Holton. It's another name.
Holton or Dresser, which do you prefer?
Holton, I think. At least Holton is a little bit like Holden Caulfield, maybe. I don't know. It's not good. Holton wouldn't be very good for like an offensive lineman name.
Yes.
But maybe as a quarterback, it's not so good. Well, you don't want to hold onto the ball that long either. So, but Geno Smith is the eldest of those 3 quarterbacks as well. He's 32. He'll be 33 on your birthday, Dr. Scaff, on October 10th.
Birthday twin?
Your birthday is
not same year though, so.
But you're 12 years older than Geno. There's another quarterback down on the list that has my birthday.
Really?
Good time. But he was a second-round pick by the Jets in 2013 out of West Virginia University. He played for the Jets for 4 seasons through 2016, then the Giants, then the Chargers, and has been with the Seahawks since 2019. He was Russell Wilson's backup until last season. He hadn't been a full-time starter since 2014, and so when he started last year, though, he had a 9-8 record, 100.9 QB rating, 69.8 completion percentage, which I believe led the league, or was leading the league most of the year. 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, over 4,000 yards passing. He was the comeback player of the year, so he got this big contract. So it seems like he had a really good year. They were thinking, well, it might be Locke or it might be Smith as the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year because they brought in Locke in that Russell Wilson trade.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Geno Smith beat him out, and Drew Lock didn't play a snap last year.
Is that right?
That was how healthy, I guess, A, how healthy Geno Smith was, but also B, probably how close the games were. There weren't any big blowouts that you want to put your backup quarterback into. Drew Lock, the backup, is 26, also a second-round draft pick, this one by the Broncos in 2019. He was from Lee's Summit, a local boy, and he was thought to be the quarterback of the future in Denver for a little while, but he was traded to Seattle as part of the Russell Wilson deal last year. 8-13 as a starter, all with Denver. Is that he didn't play a snap with Seattle last year after losing the camp battle with Geno Smith. 25-20 career touchdown interception ratio. Starter with Denver 19 and 20, but faded. He was replaced by Teddy Bridgewater in 2021, and then so he hasn't been a starter for a while, but maybe he can be serviceable. He's played decently ish, not great in the NFL, but he's got some experience. So I think the Seahawks' top two quarterbacks, both. I don't think Smith's a world beater, but he has proven that he can be an above average quarterback in the league. And especially in the NFC, that can be pretty good. And Locke is a capable backup. Holton Allers is the third quarterback. He's only 20, he's 23. He was an undrafted free agent out of East Carolina. Do you know which East Carolina University is located?
I don't.
I believe
I assume it's the East one.
East Carolina is in Greenville, North Carolina. There's a famous Greenville in South Carolina, but Greenville, North Carolina for East Carolina. So it's extra confusing. Greenville, North Carolina is the 12th most populous city of North Carolina. It is a population of nearly 90,000. Greenville, South Carolina is actually smaller than Greenville, North Carolina, but it's the 6th most populous city in South Carolina. So it's probably relative to its state, it is more important. But Greenville, North Carolina is larger. So, but anyway, Holton Allard, I'm sure, can tell you all about Greenville, Northeast Carolina. He was a 4-year starter at East Carolina. 97 touchdowns in his career there, 37 interceptions, 8-5 record last year, 28 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, almost about 3,700 yards passing. He's kind of mobile-ish. He runs for some touchdowns. He was the 2023 Hula Bowl MVP. Do you know what the Hula Bowl is? It's one of those college all-star games like the Shriners Classic and the...
I thought maybe it was like a bar game competition, like TV show or something. No.
There's the Shrine Classic, and then there's the East-West Shrine, and there's a couple others. But Hula Bowl is one of those kind of college all-star games. So he's kind of a developmental prospect. But he's the only other quarterback on the roster, though. So it seems like he's probably a practice squad guy, or maybe I guess if the teams are carrying 3 quarterbacks, or something, it's an incentive to carry 3 quarterbacks. Maybe you want to put him on there. But it seems like that might be a waste of a roster spot. But I don't think he's getting picked up by any other team, so you probably could stash him on the practice squad. Maybe as the season goes on, you might put him on the 53 when there's more injuries or something.
They allow you to keep a third quarterback without, counting against the player number for the game maximum.
Yeah, it counts. It doesn't count against the player dressing number, but it counts against the 53 number.
Yeah, sure.
So that's the problem, I think.
Yeah. I wonder how many teams are going to carry a third quarterback.
Well, the Chiefs have done it, and I think they will. I think the 49ers will for sure.
But they don't dress the third quarterback. They keep him on the roster, right? Is what they've been.
But I think now they will dress the third quarterback.
Now they will.
But I think the only time a third quarterback can come in is if the first 2 quarterbacks are both ruled out. And they come back in. So they can't just have a third guy. But that's the NFC West. I'm gonna go on to the NFC.
Yeah, so not really a battle anyway here. These are pretty well defined depth chart numbers already, right?
Yeah, the only injury seems like it's muddling the picture anywhere, and maybe we're fighting for backup positions in San Francisco and Arizona, but yeah, it's pretty settled, I think, at quarterback.
Yeah.
In the NFC West. The NFC South might be a little different.
Yeah, what do you think of? We'll start with Atlanta. What do you think of their situation with Heineke, Desmond Ridder, Logan Woodside, possibly a 4th quarterback, but not really, I guess, right? Injured Felipe Franks.
Yeah, Felipe Franks was a quarterback for Florida, and then he transferred to Arkansas, and then he said he was going to become a tight end in the NFL, sort of a Tebow-esque kind of switch, and he's been injured, so he's not on the roster. And he would, if he had been on the roster, it seems like he would have been a tight end, maybe a gimmick gadget.
Spot Track has him as a quarterback, though. So
yeah.
But they also have him listed as injured and
So it seems they have right now. They have 3 quarterbacks on the roster that aren't injured. And
Yes.
Heineke is getting is the highest paid probably, but Desmond Ritter, I believe that the Falcons want as the starter. He's
He's
23 years old. It was a third round draft pick in 2022 out of Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, the Bearcats. He was a 4-year starter, had a 42-6 record as a starter in college, so very good. Cincinnati most famously made the 2021 college football playoffs. Now that probably Desmond Ritter had a lot to do with Cincinnati's probably getting into the Big 12 since his teams did so well. 6'3", he actually ran a 4.52 40-yard dash, which is one of the fastest times for a quarterback. So he's got a lot of physical tools. He started 4 games last year, replacing Marcus Mariota, which you may have seen on Quarterback, the Netflix series. We'll talk about Mariota. He went to Philadelphia, but he had 708 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in those 4 games. So it seems like Arthur Smith, the head coach, wants to try Desmond Ritter as the starter. And they brought in Taylor Heineke probably as the backup. He's 30 now. He was an undrafted free agent from Old Dominion. You know where Old Dominion, what state Old Dominion is in?
Virginia?
It is in Virginia, yeah.
Yeah.
What city Old Dominion is, I have no idea. Norfolk, is in Norfolk, Virginia. And
I just always refer to it as Old D because it sounds funnier.
Old the ODU transferred from FCS to FBS while he was in that time. So his stats, I was thinking like, oh, they look really good the first 2 years, and then they drop off. But that's because they went from Division 1 AA to 1A, like between his sophomore and junior years. He was a 4-year starter, so his stats look worse, but he's playing against much better
The
competition.
level of competition was increased dramatically then, huh?
Yeah. That was I figured that out while I was looking at it. And he started out with the Vikings, then to the Patriots practice squad, then Houston, and then Carolina, where he started 1 game. Then he was an XFL St. Louis Battlehawk, and then he went to Washington, where he's probably best known. He started a game in Carolina when Cam Newton got hurt, and everybody got hurt on Carolina's team that year.
Yeah.
He was the 3rd quarterback, and then he went to the Battlehawks, then to Washington. He started in 2020. He actually started in Washington's playoff loss to Tampa. That was the only game he started that year. He kind of had a plucky performance against Tom Brady's team, who ended up winning and winning the Super Bowl, of course, that season. He is 12-12-1 as a starter for Washington. He's kind of a plucky guy who's really beloved by his teammates. His stats aren't out of this world, but he's not terrible either. Heineke, he's been on a lot of bad teams, and he's still been like, a person who can kind of gut out and maybe it's been kind of the opposite of somebody like Sam Darnold or one of these higher ranked quarterbacks originally, but
he was another one of those guys that it seems like the team rallied behind, though, too.
Yeah, and even this year at Washington, like he was probably better than Carson Wentz was for the team. He had 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in 9 games started, but famously, Ron Rivera put Wentz in a game after Heineke had kind of led Washington to a number of victories, but losing that game cost Washington a playoff spot. Heineke was 5-3-1 with Washington last year, and
Wentz is out of the league,
and then Carson Wentz was 2-5 with Washington, and with stats that were not quite as good, but he was brought in as a starter. And that's why he's
salary, big contract too, right?
Yeah. Well, he got that big contract with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And then he was injured a lot and not so great. So he got traded to Indianapolis. And then Indianapolis says, well, you're not that great. We're going to trade you to Washington. And then now he's just out of the league currently.
Yeah.
But Heineke has a job again. And so he's a plucky kind of underdog. He's a I think that you can have if Ritter crumbles. Logan Woodside is the third quarterback, 7th round pick by the Bengals out of Toledo in 2018. Pocket passer, mostly a backup on the Titans since then. He has not thrown an NFL pass. His only pro football experiences with the AAF's San Antonio Commanders. Do you remember what the AAF stands for?
Yeah, it was the what was it? Alliance of American Football.
Alliance of American. The league that was, I think, was before the XFL and the USFL. The San Antonio Commanders, just like so I guess there was an AAF team called the Commanders before the Washington Commanders, so it's even maybe a worse nickname than we remember. Any comments on the Falcons?
They're one of the strange, the strange teams that has like a very cheap starting QB. Desmond Ridder would be much more expensive but more seasoned backup. Heineke's going to be making 5.7 million this year. So Desmond Ridder's 1.2. And the theme that we will see in the NFC South is that they do not spend a lot of money on their quarterbacks as a division, even. So,
yeah, I guess that might change with Carolina if Bryce Young becomes a really good player, but his salary is gonna go up and up because he's number 1 overall pick. So he's got a scale. So like you said that Trey Lance was making $9 million this year. I think this is his 4th season. So Young will make more than that as being the number 1 pick rather than the number 3 pick.
Right.
Salary is going to escalate. But
Bryce Young by being a high draft pick is the number 2 paid quarterback in the NFC South. By a very minor margin, though. But I will say that in the preseason game, Logan Woodside is the only quarterback that played for Atlanta, and it seemed like he did all right. Not great though, but they won too. So what does that mean? Nothing at all, right?
Hard to say. Yeah.
Should we move on to Carolina?
Let's go on to Carolina. Yeah.
You just mentioned the
and speaking of confusing Carolinas, Carolina is in Charlotte, North Carolina. So East Carolina and just plain old Carolina are in North Carolina. Would that irritate you if you were from South Carolina, that someone's just calling themselves Carolina?
Yeah.
And they assume that you mean North Carolina, and then they say East Carolina, which is not a state.
Right.
It's not Eastern North Carolina. It's just East Carolina.
Right. No, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
I don't think it should be allowed, but
silly. Yeah. Just silly.
If you want to just call your state Carolina, you can call your state Carolina, like Virginia. But you can't. Yeah, I don't think. No. You remember when North Dakota was thinking of changing its name to just Dakota?
Right. And everyone laughed at them.
Yeah. And everybody might be laughing at the Carolina Panthers this year. We don't know, but who else do we have on the Panthers roster? I think they've got the quarterback position covered quite a bit, since they have how many quarterbacks on the roster right now?
4. Yeah, Andy Dalton looks like the number 2 quarterback on the ESPN depth chart. Matt Corral, number 3. Jake Luton.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's how I pronounce both those last ones.
Yeah,
Corral, Jake Luton.
Corral and Luton.
Yeah, but the youngest of the 4 quarterbacks is Bryce Young. He's 22 years old, first overall pick in 2023 from the University of Alabama. He was the Heisman winner his sophomore season 2021. His production dropped off a bit in 2022 when a lot of his weapons graduated a year ahead of him. So maybe that doesn't bode terribly well. He was less good in 2022. He's not really a running quarterback, even though he's so small. He only had 162 total rushing yards in college. He's only 5'10", which is about the same size as Kyler Murray, but Murray is much more of a runner. At least he can move around and get out of the pocket. Young, I think, is mobile, but he doesn't run very much. He was the former backup to one of Warren Trick Power Hour's favorite people, Michael McCorkle Jones. The Panthers would trade up from number 9 to get Bryce Young from the Bears, who had the number 1 overall pick. They created DJ Moore and some picks for him. And Young is from California. He went to Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana Catholic University. Like current Chiefs wide receiver, possibly fringe roster prospect, Nico Remigio. But a lot of NFL quarterbacks have gone to Mater Dei. It's one of the big kind of famous football powerhouses of the Los Angeles area from California. But did you know that basically every quarterback who has gone to Mater Dei has been an NFL bust? And they've had 3 Heisman Trophy winners go to Mater Dei, including Bryce Young, but none of the quarterbacks have done anything in the NFL. The first Heisman quarterback was from the 1960s. That was John Huarte. It would probably be in Huarte in Spanish. He was the first Hispanic person to win a Heisman, but he pronounced his name, it was Huarte. He pronounced his name Hewart instead of Huarte, probably to sound more
Americanized, I guess.
Anglo, yeah. He was actually drafted by both the NFL and the AFL, but he went to the AFL because that would be easier, but he got beaten out by Joe Namath. And then he became a backup to Len Dawson, and he barely played at all in professional football. So he was never a starter, really. And so he probably didn't live up to his hype. Matt Barkley, famously USC quarterback that played in the NFL a bit. I think he might be still on the Bills as a backup, but never quite panned out. JT Daniels was a quarterback. He's currently at Rice, but he's been bounced around a lot. He had been at the University of Georgia when Stetson Bennett was there, and Jake Fromm were there and stuff like that. And also former USC Heisman Trophy winner, former Cardinal Matt Leinart, who famously kind of bombed out of the NFL, and also perhaps one of the most famous NFL quarterback busts of all time, from USC star Todd Marinovich. So none of these modern day quarterbacks have turned out to be anything. So if Bryce Young turns out to be a solid quarterback, he will buck a trend of Mater Dei players playing well. So I had been down on Bryce Young before, but now with that information, I am even more down on Bryce Young, because I don't think he's too small to be a great quarterback. And I think
apparently went to Mater Dei. So
lots of pro athletes went there, as well as Shawshank Redemption character actor Bob Gunton, who played Warden Norton, went to Mater Dei as well. But Catholic high school in Santa Ana, California, seems like a great school, but it's in terms of its quarterback output, lots of quarterbacks, but no NFL stars. Backup probably to Young.
Oh, there is one Chiefs player from there. Did you know that?
Not Nico Remigio.
No, Trent McDuffie is from.
Oh, McDuffie went to Mater Dei. I didn't see that. So we have Nico Remigio and Trent McDuffie. So any other exciting names on the Mater Dei alumni list that you see?
Looks like the Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, yeah. We've had some good position players lately, then, it seems like.
Yeah. I'm not sure. The other Rams player Quentin Lake is from there too. Matt Barkley, yeah, you mentioned him. Yeah, Leinart. Yeah, it doesn't. This doesn't list Remigio, but he probably hasn't been in the NFL yet, so that's why he's not listed on this list anyway.
He was listed on the Wikipedia list that I mentioned.
Yeah. But Amon-Ra, but not his brother, I guess.
Equanimous
apparently did not go to that high school.
I think there's another St. Brown as well.
Is there a third? There is a third St. Brown.
Even though there was no St. Brown in real life, but
yes. Oh yeah, he went to Orange Lutheran, and
we have a Lutheran and a Catholic.
Right.
Osiris St. Brown, that's the other St.
Brown.
He is currently at Stanford as a wide. Oh, he went to Stanford as a wide receiver. I guess he did not make it in the NFL. But someone who has made it in the NFL and has been there for a long time is Andy Dalton, the backup at Carolina. It seems like they had thought perhaps maybe I thought perhaps maybe he'd be the starter at the beginning of the year, but I think Bryce Young has been named the starter for week one. Andy Dalton, red rifle as they call him sometimes, 35 years old now, 6'2", second round pick from TCU in 2011. Played with Cincinnati until 2019. He's bounced around the last 3 years with the Cowboys in 20, Bears 21, Saints 22. He is 83, 77, and 2 as a starter, 0-4 in the postseason. He went from 2011 to 2014 to the playoffs with Cincinnati. He's been a solid starter, at least recently. Even recently with the Saints, he had 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So he's switched NFC South teams, but still a solid player. A good backup, I think, if Young struggles. So, I think
inexpensive, really, for a player of his caliber, at least anyway. Only $2.1 million for his salary for this year.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, it seems like everybody's going on the cheap in the NFC South. The third quarterback is probably going to be Matt Corral, 24 years old, third round pick from Ole Miss. 20 spots lower than Desmond Ridder. So we had Desmond Ridder, third round pick, as the first quarterback in 2022. Third pick 2022 as the first quarterback for Atlanta, but we have essentially another third round pick in 2022, Matt Corral, who is the third quarterback, probably at best, in Carolina. He is of Mexican descent, and he actually once got into a fight in high school with one of Wayne Gretzky's sons. Do you think Wayne Gretzky's son would be a good fighter or not so good at fighting? The hockey kid, but he's also Wayne Gretzky's kid. I don't think Gretzky was ever known as a...
I don't remember him being that big of a fighter, at least anyway. He wasn't a goon, at least.
He wasn't a goon, no. Wayne's kid, I guess he ended up transferring schools, I think, because he didn't like that school, because he was like a rich, snobby school, he thought. But he ended up being a solid starter for Ole Miss, 57 touchdowns, 23 interceptions in college, 18 rushing touchdowns. He's a developmental player. Is he that much worse than Ridder? But he's probably no higher than number 3. He, however, only had a 15 on his Wonderlic, so he might not be the brightest of guys. So that's not so high. 15 is pretty low.
That was the last year of the Wonderlic too, wasn't it?
Yeah, they didn't have. I looked at this year; they don't have Wonderlic scores for a lot of them, but
it's some other test that they give now, right? So
yeah, I think they should do the Wonderlic just to keep it, just so we can have a consistency from year. You can also add the other score, but the Wonderlic only takes like 45 minutes at most. So why not just keep it around? And the fourth quarterback probably is Jake Luton. Jacksonville, 6th round pick from 2020. He started his career at Idaho, then went to Ventura Community College, then Oregon State. He has a 33 on the Wonderlic, which is well above average. So maybe we could see Luton get the number 3 spot if he studies and learns more, maybe than Matt Corral. I don't know. He started 3 games for Jacksonville in 2020, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's been with Seattle, Miami, and Jacksonville, and also New Orleans. So he's been with several teams. So but he's got a little bit of experience. That's Carolina. Any additional information on Carolina's quarterbacks financially?
In their spring training game, they did start Bryce Young. Didn't do all that well, I guess, but Matt Corral played the rest of the game, it seems. Also did not do so well.
Carolina 27-0 defeat.
Yes. 27-0, yes.
Should we move on to New Orleans?
New Orleans Saints up next, yeah. Derek Carr is the new starter, presumed starter. Solid backup, though, with Jameis Winston. And then Jake Hayner is the third quarterback there.
Yeah, and you said the Saints are spending a lot more money on their quarterbacks relative to other teams in their division, right?
They're the highest paid quarterback tandem, at least anyway, from the NFC South. Carr 7.2 million, backup Winston at 4.5, and Hayner at just under $1 million.
Yes, and you might also say, we'll talk about Carr and Winston. They might be actually the top two quarterbacks in the division. Maybe you could say, like, at least in terms of NFL success or current, if you kind of combine NFL success with current ability, maybe you could say Dalton would have been up there, Baker Mayfield probably, possibly, Heineke maybe, but I think David Carr's probably the unquestioned number one.
Yeah.
I think Winston has a claim on number two, at least. Carr is 32 years old. He's been 2014 second round pick to the Raiders, and he's went to Fresno State like his brother David Carr, who was famously drafted number one overall by the Texans and didn't pan out because he was sacked so many times. But Derek Carr's been a four-time Pro Bowler. He's 217 NFL touchdown passes, only 99 interceptions. He's only 63 and 79 as a starter, though. That's probably because of the dysfunction in Raiderland. And he led Oakland to 2 playoff appearances. He was hurt in 2016, and he lost to Cincinnati in the 2021 wild card game. But this is his first year in New Orleans. So he's looking for, I mentioned maybe before, he might be the second best quarterback in the NFC, even if you think that Hurts's 1 year counts as the best quarterback. So I'd say he's up there with Cousins and Dak Prescott, probably as possibly maybe one or two in the, if you think Hurts might be a flash in the pan. But that's Carr. Jameis Winston is backup. Is 20.
Maybe one quick note on Carr, just because you mentioned it. Derek Carr or David Carr, who do you think was sacked more times in their career? For reference, Derek Carr has played 142 NFL games. His brother David has played 94 NFL games. Who was sacked more times?
Derek Carr was sacked like an incredible number of times, but I think
led the league 3 different seasons.
I think Derek has been in the league longer, 3 extra seasons. So I would say Derek has probably been sacked more.
It is extremely close, but David Carr has still been sacked 3 more times. 267 to 264 sacks. So between them, they have been sacked over 500 times.
How many people do you think have sacked both cars?
I don't know how to even look that
That's
up.
a research question for another day.
Yeah, that may take some time to figure that one out, but
yeah.
Yes.
But that's one of the last sports.
How many different people do you think sacked? That's interesting anyway, though. Like, it's been sacked 260.
I bet we could find
only by 4 different players.
Yeah. We can find that out. But yeah, Derek Carr, I think a change of scenery, from silver to gold, will be a boon for him. And if Carr gets hurt, or if he doesn't work out that well, I think Jameis Winston's a pretty good backup. He's 29 years old, former number 1 overall pick by Tampa Bay in 2015, 2013 Heisman winner. He's a 27 on the Wonderlic, so quite a bit higher still than Matt Corral. He's started 80 games in the NFL, 34 and 46 as a starter. His last year as a full-time starter was in 2019, when he started for the Buccaneers before they brought Tom Brady in. He threw for 5,109 yards that season, 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, so like a lot of picks. He's maybe was the only 30-30 quarterback in NFL history with 30 touchdowns and 30 picks in the same year.
Yeah.
Even Brett Favre didn't quite match that. But is it possible the Saints have the 2 best quarterbacks in the division, even if Winston turns the ball over a bit more than you'd like? He has creativity. He has, he's proven that he can be a pretty successful NFL quarterback, at least in terms of yardage and touchdown passes.
Some people might say they actually also have the 3rd best quarterback, but was one that we have not talked about in this segment yet.
Are you talking about Taysom Hill? Yeah. Well, Taysom Hill is not listed as a quarterback any longer, at least. But I think Taysom Hill's gone from overused quarterback to underused utility player in the last few years. So he's no longer on at least my enemies list in terms of the NFL.
He did make an appearance. I didn't even notice it. He had one catch in the preseason game out of the tight end slot. So that's it. Oh, yeah, but he also apparently suffered a minor oblique strain in practice. Yeah, so
Poor Taysom. But the actual third quarterback list
this is a Mike Werman first. Taysom Hill underused.
Yeah,
That's gonna be the headline.
that will be the headline.
They'll be used for you and attributed to you now, right?
That's right. That's right.
Out of all of this that we're talking about today, that'll be the one line that gets pulled out, right?
Yes, he's my favorite player now. The actual third quarterback on the Saints is Jake Hayner, 2023 fourth round pick, also from Fresno State, like Derek Carr. So maybe they have some stories they can swap about their college years in Fresno. He began his college career at Washington. He's under 6 feet tall, however, much like Bryce Young. A pocket passer, also much like Bryce Young. Also much like Bryce Young. His best year was probably 2021 and not his most recent season. He had a 68-18 touchdown interception ratio in college. Definitely going to be the third quarterback. Maybe a developmental prospect, but you know, I don't have I don't have much else to say about Jake Hayner. Should we move on to Tampa Bay, or do you want to sum up our Saints?
I would say all three quarterbacks did play in the preseason game. Carr, as we saw, because they played against the Chiefs, we saw Carr first drive at least anyway, and then Winston and Hayner did both play. Hayner ended up leading the team in yardage, though, 105 yards.
Nice.
So he seems to be at least competent under center, apparently, right?
Apparently so.
In a third string capacity, at least, anyway.
Yes.
All right.
I hear somebody says he's 6'1", but I saw he was actually under.
ESPN says 6'1".
Speaking of under 6 feet, we have Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. Should we go through the Tampa Bay?
Yeah. Also, only three quarterbacks on their roster: Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, John Wolford.
How much money are these guys making? Are they making?
They're all inexpensive. Baker Mayfield's the most expensive quarterback on the roster, $1.7 million this season. Kyle Trask 1.5, John Wolford at 1. So the whole team is spending only $4.2 million from their quarterback position, which is by far the lowest of any team in the NFC. And I presume in the NFL.
It's even low by NFC South standards, which is
a third of the Saints.
Yeah,
quarterback expenditures.
Like it's the Cambodia of wages for the NFL, but
they're actually only spending less than 2% of their total team salary on the quarterback position, which is very different from every other team in the league. Right.
Well, it works for them. You would think they'd have a lot of monsters on that team, but it seems like they've got a lot of aging players that are maybe no longer what they once were, aging wide receivers. Godwin and others. So, but Baker Mayfield is brought in fresh from two teams he played for last year, Carolina and the Rams. He bounced back, he bounced between those two teams. Started out at Carolina and then went to the Rams. He's the former number 1 overall pick by Cleveland in 2018, former Heisman Trophy winner from 2017. Spotty NFL career, 31-38 as a starter. He did, however, lead the Browns to the playoffs in 2020. He's won a playoff game. I guess you could say he very nearly won a second if it had not been for the heroics of Chiefs backup quarterback Chad Henne when Patrick Mahomes went down in that game, the divisional game in 2020. But so he has 102 career touchdowns, 64 interceptions, a 86.5 passer rating. So he's been not maybe what they thought he might be, but he's been an okay quarterback. So maybe he can revive his career in Tampa.
He had a pretty good showing with the Rams then, right? At the end of the, like, kind of as a surprise move. Getting
he won a game, I think, without even like had been on the Rams for like 2 days, and he won a game.
Yeah.
And like it seems like he did better without even preparing than he did when he prepared. So that's not necessarily a good sign.
That's right.
Like him,
the more knowledge he has over the system, the worse he performs. Is that
yeah, just winging it, he's just as good. And that seems maybe like he's that's what Kyler Murray learned his habits from Baker Mayfield, Oklahoma.
In the Big 12.
Yeah. Mayfield had been actually at Texas Tech before going to Oklahoma. He was bounced out by Davis Webb, I believe. And Webb was bounced out by Patrick Mahomes. So Webb has not really been much in the NFL. But his Baker Mayfield's, I guess, current backup, maybe threat to start, is Kyle Trask, second round pick in 2021 from Florida. He is a much bigger guy than Mayfield. He's 6'5", 2-year starter at Florida. He threw for more than 4,000 yards as a senior in 2020, 43 touchdowns, 8 interceptions that year. But he has only 9 career NFL pass attempts. He's battling Mayfield for the starting spot. He's actually named Kyle after the Texas A&M stadium, Kyle Field. Yes, his family. I think he had a grandfather who played for Texas A&M and played in the NFL. Orville Trask, I believe his name was. But anyway, Kyle Trask, brought in as the kind of maybe developmental prospect under Tom Brady last year, possibly a threat to start over Mayfield this year. Another former developmental quarterback now, probably cemented as number 3, or at least right now, is John Wolford. He's 27 now, undrafted free agent from Wake Forest. He played for the Jets practice squad in 2018. Like Mayfield is kind of short, under 6 feet tall. Then he played for the AAF Arizona Hotshots, and then was on the Rams for 4 years. Started 4 games in the NFL, only 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions. He actually started the 2020 playoff win against Seattle over Jared Goff. At that point, he had a broken thumb, but Wolford got hurt, and Goff actually played the rest of the playoffs with that broken thumb. He lost them, I believe, the next game to Green Bay, but that's Wolford. He was kind of maybe seen as a up-and-comer by Sean McVay at one point, but I think once Stafford came in, he was kind of expendable. So that's the quarterback situation for Tampa.
They did all 3 play in the preseason game. Who do you think led the team, had the most passing yardage?
Probably number 3, Wolford. That's my guess.
It was Wolford. He also had by far the most attempts, though, too. So. Yeah. But Mayfield was 8 of 9 for 63 yards and a touchdown. So that's not so bad.
Not bad. That's the Buccaneers. Now we're halfway through the NFC.
Yeah, maybe the note for the NFC South as a whole, though, is as an entire unit, the NFC South pays quarterbacks less than half of any of the other divisions in the NFC. Do you think that's a correlation to the performance of the teams in the NFC? Because that division does seem to be the worst.
It is the worst, and I think it was the worst last year, and it probably will be the worst again this year. So, and the NFC is the lesser of the 2 conferences, it seems like, pretty clearly in terms of quarterback play. So we would think that maybe we think quarterback's the most important position. Having the least resources devoted to quarterbacking is probably not a sound strategy. So, but they have young quarterbacks. Maybe we could say Ritter and Trask and Young, if they become good quarterbacks, that could just be like, well, they're just on rookie contracts, and it's not really a, a money thing.
Yeah.
That's the theory, I guess.
Or the money will follow if the performance is there, right?
Yes, yes.
Maybe they'll end up paying more as these guys develop, but yeah.